Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Special Finance Committee budget meeting of March 5th, 2026. We acknowledge with gratitude that our business operations take place on the traditional territory of the Sianu and South First Nations. These lands have nourished generations, providing not only food and medicine, but also serving as a vital link to ancestors, cultural teachings, and values passed down through time. The relationship between the nations and the land is deep, enduring, and sacred. Our decisions on council are guided by a responsibility to support and enhance the continuation of this relationship and not impair the rich heritage that has stewarded and sustained these lands since time immemorial. Committee, we have an agenda before you. Are there any additions beyond the pinks? We have correspondence here. Anything else? Move adoption. Moved by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Gray. I invite everybody to acknowledge that Councillor Shukin is online with us this afternoon as well. Good afternoon, Councillor Shukin. Can you hear us okay?
I can. Thanks very much.
Great. Okay. Okay, so to the first and second, all in favor? Carrie, thank you. Okay, so this meeting is intended to be a space where inclusion is paramount and all individuals are treated with dignity. We strive to ensure everyone feels welcome and respected. I ask that you remain respectful as you present your comments to council, staff, and visitors in the gallery this afternoon. On the agenda, we have public participation. If you would like to speak, please step up to the podium and state your name and the street on which you live. You have 4 minutes to speak. And press the little button for the red light. There you are.
Okay. Hi, Carol Voigt, Gemini Drive. I'd like to just address the agenda item number 3A, the council report, please. Pages 5 and 6 of the subject report include a succinct, high-level summary of revenues and expenses associated with the Metchosin School property. The report helpfully segregates expenses and revenues into 4 simple categories: the gym and field, the new classrooms and kitchen, leases, and MACA. This allows district residents and taxpayers to get a clearer understanding of progress being made toward the stated school management plan goal of a 60% cost recovery. The report further notes that approximately 59% of the property infrastructure is attributed to the combination of gym, classrooms, and leases and common areas, with a balance of 41% being attributed to MACA. For the 2025 report, it cites an overall cost recovery level of about 33%, which is a little over half of the goal of the targeted 60%. From this report, we can draw the following 5 conclusions. Number 1, inclusive of all input cost categories in 2025, the revenue to expense ratio for the 4 areas was the gym and field about 50%, the classrooms and kitchen about 13%, the leases 145%, in other words, we made a profit, and MACA 8.5%. Number 2, for each of these 3 cost categories which did not deliver a profit, so inclusive only of steady state long-term expenses, excluding amortization and debt repayment, which will eventually disappear, the 2025 revenue to expense ratio was, for the gym and field, 93%, in other words, we almost broke even, and I can report that 90% of that income was from pickleball. The classrooms and kitchen, 24%, and MACA 24.7%. Number 3, a rather modest increase in the nonprofit gym field utilization rate would succeed in delivering the target 60% cost recovery rate for the gym and field portion. In other words, it's not going to take much for us to go from the 50% we have to the 60% that we want. Number 4, more in-depth analysis of the classroom, kitchen, and MACA components are needed to assist these components of the school complex to attain the targeted 60% cost recovery rate, which currently sit at 13 and 8.5%. So we have a ways to go there. Number 5, as part of our long-term cost recovery goals, it appears that we need to have commercial leases as part of our overall mix because they help us make money. I respectfully request that you take these conclusions into your assessment of progress toward the long-term 60% cost recovery target for the former Metchosin School site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next person.
Good afternoon. My name is Morgan Yates, and I'm a Metchosin resident of Gemini Drive. Thank you for the opportunity to address matters included under item 3A of this meeting agenda. The council report dated March 5th and authored by our district CFO states that every dollar directed toward community support is a dollar that cannot be directed toward infrastructure renewal, reserve strengthening, or staffing capacity. With this statement, the report's author has implicitly recognized the important concept of opportunity cost. And with this recognition of concept, it can be equally asserted that every dollar spent on overpriced infrastructure projects, unnecessary consultants' reports, and administrative staffing increases that are not supported by objective assessments of performance and productivity is a dollar that cannot be spent on well-established priorities such as providing a modicum of tax exemption support for those nonprofit agencies that help to define and sustain our rural community character. Rather than continuing to single out community support as a specific potential burden, I believe that it would behoove all of us to take a more holistic look at the district's fiscal management practices. There are many areas for improvement. Compare, for example, the June 2025 endorsement by a slim majority of Metchosin Council to spend an estimated $22 million on a fire hall replacement project to the $6.1 million cost estimated for an analogous project in Comox that will serve a population 3 times larger than our own. As I've communicated on prior occasions, we would also do well to encourage or perhaps even compel pertinent administrative staff to review the November 2025 Victoria Foundation report on the economic contribution of regional nonprofits. This report cites an average output benefit to input cost ratio of 40 to 1. There are few, if any, discretionary district expenditure categories that would offer a comparable multiplier effect. So in plain English, or for greater clarity, by conveying a modest property tax exemption to those nonprofits which provide strategic services, we are able to avoid spending much larger sums to receive similar services from for-profit enterprises. Lastly, to my knowledge, Metchosin has not recently undertaken a disciplined, objective, and transparent zero-based budgeting exercise that would help taxpayers to differentiate between genuinely warranted expenditures and discretionary ones. This is particularly important and could be most impactful for those departments or expense categories that consume the largest shares of available revenue. Please take these considerations thoughtfully into account in your own assessment of the overarching interests of Metchosin taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bev Bacon, Metchosin resident. I sent you a letter. I'd just like to read it to enter it into the record, and then I'd address my question to Mr. Creek. I invite you to look at the BC assessment for our school building property, and this is very conservative. It says that our property is now worth $3,765,400, up 13% from last year. I don't do accounting, but I do real estate, and I don't think the tenants need to break even. I don't think they need to help us break even. We're making out like bandits in capital appreciation. And I'll ask Mr. Creek to tell me what he just, or tell you what he just told me. We bought this place for a pittance and turned it into a well-used community center. I don't share the expectation that the school should break even or pay for itself. I don't have a problem with local programs run by volunteers paying, quote, non-market rent. Does capital appreciation of our real estate assets figure into the calculations? If we invested in gold and gold went up in value, that would come into the report. We have other investments. If we invest in GICs and they go up in value, that would come into the report. We've invested in real estate. It's skyrocketed. And nowhere is that reflected in the report. No disrespect to Mr. Creek, but I don't like his summary statement. Every dollar directed towards community support is a dollar that cannot be directed towards infrastructure renewal, reserve strengthening, or staffing capacity. As a financial pressure increases, council may wish to consider whether the current level of support remains sustainable or whether adjustments are required to balance community programming with long-term infrastructure and service delivery needs. Maybe how he learned to do accounting in school, but it doesn't reflect Machosen's values, and it doesn't reflect how rich we've become by owning 5 acres in the middle of the city. It's worth millions of dollars, and nowhere does that show. So people keep beating up on the school. You're not breaking even. You're not giving back every dime we put into you. The school is making us rich. We could sell it if we wanted to. We could sell it and buy forest. We would buy millions of dollars worth of forest with that. But we don't intend to sell it, but the potential is there, and it's our asset, and it's worth a whole lot of money, and nowhere does it come into this report. And my last line is a little bit cheeky, but I really sometimes harp on we should have country roads that look like country roads. The faster we make our roads, the more traffic comes zipping through. And we've got a lot of people coming through from Souk and East Souk that would maybe not come through on our roads or would slow down if our roads weren't so good. And personally, the yellow lines on country roads offends me. So I would invite Mr. Creek to explain to us what that property is worth and why it doesn't figure into our accounting figures. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Creek will bring that up during his report. Thank you.
Barb Sawatsky, Kavir Road. I just have some questions because I'm not sure how the financial process works. I do agree with Bev Bacon when she says that some of our country roads should just be left as country roads. Why the heck a yellow line went up Arden Road? I have no idea. We didn't ask for it. It's not necessary, and it's just a country road. And many of the roads that I see that are going to be worked on, they should just be left. I mean, some of them have 5 houses on them and they might have 2 potholes, but they're not in bad shape. Anyway, council originally voted to release $15,000 to build stairs at Weirs Beach. The final total came in at over $39,000. My questions: which department or select committee budget was billed for the Duke Road and Weir Beach expenses? What is the process to release further funding when a project greatly exceeds the original voted on amount? Must council vote to release further funding? And if so, when did this take place for the Weir Beach stairs? And my third question: if projects go over budget, such as expenses with the Weir Beach stairs, is the amount subtracted from the following year's budget? And by budget, I do mean which department or select committee. And if it's not subtracted, then why not? Do people do the groups just go ahead and spend money and apologize afterwards? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak? You press the button, the red light will go on.
Button.
There you are.
Fancy new things. Jennifer Burgess, 3837 Duke Road. Out of breath because there's no parking outside there, so I had to park way down at the bottom. Anyhow, I will try and come earlier next time. I came because I was surprised to read some of Mr. Creek's comments as I went through 69 pages. In the past, I printed off 69 pages and had a good look at them all. This time, I didn't feel that I really wanted to do that, wear out my little printer. But I found some pretty important things in the 69 pages. And I felt most important of all, there's a bit of history missing here. When we purchased the school, and I've been following our budget plan since at least 2018, maybe 2017, the intent when we purchased the school was to use policing reserves entirely to purchase the school. I have not detected yet where there was a decision made instead to call it debt repayment of $42,500 annually. I totally object to that. First of all, the word debt. I don't believe it's debt. You have policing reserves, you have reserve funds that could be used to pay off what was a very, as someone has explained, total bargain for this municipality to buy this school in the first place. So now we have a school that was bought not for what people thought at the beginning as a pittance, but we now think it's a pittance because it is assessed at $2.765 million. Yes. Actually, it improved 1 million over 1 year, which is astounding. We can't always account on that kind of assessment increase, I think. But so I would like some consideration given to this overall cost to the district of $180,000, $42,500 of which was repaying debt on the school. I do not believe that it is debt. I believe that there are other ways to compensate for the way that the original purchase of the school was intended to be. So the other sentence that I know that some people here also take a bit of concern to is the debate about the impact on the average $165 directly on an owner's tax bill, reflecting the ongoing policy choice by council. I'd like to thank council for that ongoing policy choice, because where would we be without the heart of Metchosin? And if that's what it costs, I'm delighted that council has decided to support organizations, arts and culture, recreation and community programming instead of whatever the other concerns are at the moment. And yes, we always have an increase in our taxes. So I'm very pleased that you are considering the amount of support that the community gives to you. I have a few other little interesting comments. As I went through the 69 pages, I did print some of them off. So the other comment was about the police funding. The police funding was under budget for 2025. And I knew I'd run out of time because I have. Okay. The other comment I was going to make actually at the very beginning was whether it's appropriate for me to make an appointment with Mr. Creek and explain some of these, but these are also, I think, council decisions. So if I could make an appointment with you at some point, that would be great. Thank you.
Any other comments from the gallery?
Gary Lamb, Hatmore Drive. Whoa, that was quick. Just a few things I'd like to bring up for council's consideration as well as CFOs. In reading through the information, I guess I had some difficulty where rather than quantitative terms being used, such as dollars and percentages, we use terms such as slight, significant, which have no quantification to them. So I would recommend that to the extent possible, we incorporate numbers and percentage changes so people can relate it back to the actual numbers. The other thing is, in line with that, I would urge council and the CAO and CFO to consider a meeting set up with the public whereby they can talk openly and directly with the CFO regarding the 2026 to 2030 budget and raise any questions. I understand there may be certain topics or questions that the CFO is not going to be able to speak to, and that is fine. But I think people would get a better appreciation of what really is the underlying basis for the numbers appearing in the 5-year budget. The last point I have is the timing of the meeting. 4 o'clock, consideration may be warranted as to whether we change this budget meeting to 7 o'clock so that more people can in fact attend. I know in talking to a few people that they indicated they would like to attend this, but because of the time, they're unable to due to work commitments. So anyways, that's my points. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else in the gallery like to speak? Seeing none, I will then move on to the reports. The financial report, 4th quarter of 2025. I ask Mr. Creek to present to us now, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Through the chair, I guess I will start with some of these questions. From Bev about the property values not being accounted for anywhere in the reports. Unfortunately, I got to follow public sector accounting standards when it comes down to capital investments like land and building. And so we just record at the time of purchase, and then I don't get to adjust the value of land. I could say right now on our books, the district has roughly $6 million in value of land. When you look at all the BC assessment notices that came in January, it comes to $36 million in total currently. But unless in my mind, there's no real reason to actually factor that in, because 1, we're not selling any land, and B, we're not taking on debt and using the land as collateral. So it has no real fiscal value to us. It's just what it's being used for, right? 30 million of that 36 is all just parkland that the district owns. And so unless the district plans on selling that to use it for something else, it's really not worth anything. We'll go off to Barb. So the Duke Road painting lines, trail budget. That was coming out of the public works budget there for the 19,000 for the crosswalk and line painting adjustments there. The Weir Beach Stairs was coming out of the Parks and Rec budget. If an item does go over budget, it's not removed from future budgets. So like, we're not reducing the Parks and Rec budget by the equivalent of the overage for 2026. I guess council could come up with a policy stating that, but right now just kind of move on with the loss, unfortunately, or overage, and then end up taking any extra money out of reserve if need be, or essentially offsetting the surplus for this year. Right, for 2025, had a $680,000 surplus. Could have been $700,000 if the Weir Beach Stairs didn't go over. In regards to the police reserve and debt repayment, so this was a big thing when I got here looking into that. People said the money came from the police reserve. When I looked into the accounting of it, it just came out of the general capital reserve. I read meeting minutes talking about it coming out of the police reserve. What actually happened and what was recorded did not reflect that. And so they've always considered it debt repayment since 2018, coming from, they said they were going to take money from the school and what was generated there to repay the general capital reserve. And I've just followed suit with that. Unless council wants to change how that's done going forward, we could come up with a different name for it if you want. It's you borrowed money one way or another in order to purchase that school. You feel like because that school was supposed to be breaking even, you're just going to repay the general capital reserve for the future building of, fire hall, municipal hall, something else, fire trucks, whatever it might be. Oops. In regards to Gary's question, noted, I will stop using those words of slight, significant, over. I'll put some figures in there for you. The public meeting, I think we'll do an open house. Anybody can come ask me questions. I guess as Burgess was asking there, you can give me a call anytime. I'm here 99% of the time in the office. Happy to meet with anybody, talk about anything for the budget, how things are going. Open house, probably fingers crossed by the end of March here. We've got the audit happening third week of March, so kind of fit it in around there. And then meeting time, kind of leave that up to council's discretion if they want to change anything. All right, on to the good stuff. So we are now essentially done with 2025. And here's what we're going to be talking about today. So a quick summary, department breakdown for outreach or looking, capital projects in the year, and then take questions from council. So for 2025, quick snapshot from page 3 of the agenda. So total revenue was $7.5 million. Total expenses were $6.5 million. Ended up with a surplus of $651,000. That included a reserve contributions of $1.8 million, mostly from our amortization of assets, roads, buildings, that type of thing. We had total capital spending of $1.1 million, and at the end of the year, police reserve balance was down to $1.1 million after using about $110,000 to balance the books there. And then, as previously mentioned there, the school ended up losing $180,000. Just two numbers I thought I'd highlight because there have been contentious items in the district. So, what are we looking at here? For expenses, council overall had an annual budget of $148,000. Actual spend came in at $147,000. There's a few items that went over there for advertising. So notice of public hearings and the property dispositions. So those are the leases for $1, right? We have to advertise that we're giving this to somebody so that somebody can If they don't agree with that, they can come in. It's very expensive to do these advertisements because they have to be advertised twice. Cost about $1,400 a pop, and we have to do it based on the community charter. And then conferences were under budget thanks to UBCM being in Victoria, so we didn't have to travel, didn't have to book hotels or anything like that. Administration. So this guy was 1.25, ended up in 1.29. This was mostly related to our wages and benefits due to a mid-year adjustment for staff to get them up to regional averages. And then the contractors were over budget thanks to our FOIs and appraisals for some land. FOI is going to come up in the next draft financial plan report, but it is coming in way over budget for 2026 already. We've done 2 months, it's at $20,000 we've had to pay just for FOI contractors, and it sounds like every election year there's more and more. So we might have to actually bump that up higher than what I've budgeted for already for 2026. Next guy up, fire department. So the budget was just over 1.5 million. Darn, I didn't think I'd laugh. So just over $1 million. Actual came in just slightly over that, about 30,000. Now those actual expenses, because wildfire costs, they came in 56,000. We don't budget for because we're ideally not planning for any wildfires, but that's recovered through revenue, so it's offset. Plus we make a little bit of money on that, about 10%. Fire hall repairs and maintenance on the building, so that was 26,000 over budget. That was discussed fully during 2025, so there's some remediation that was going on there. And then training, that was $62,000 over budget, but again, recovered through revenue, so not a loss to the district. But so if you remove those items, you actually end up under budget if everything was actually accounted for. So things are looking good. I had actually had a budget meeting with the new fire chief yesterday. Sounds really positive on where he's going to go with things. Should be able to rein a few more things down and actually come in a little cheaper 2026. RCMP, so as mentioned, came in under budget. All of this was related to accrued liabilities that the district had built up basically when RCMP was coming on board in 2022. Heavily recorded some accrued liabilities for contracting, civilian staffing, accommodations, that type of thing. And then they weren't used to offset the expenses in 2023. And then in 2024, we used a little bit. I talked to the auditors, how do we do this? They were wondering too. So in 2025, I eliminated all of those to offset our costs and help bring things under budget. And so we're now eliminated our accrued liabilities. You'll find that on the financial statements when those are released. Your liabilities have dropped almost $300,000 just by using up a variety of accrued liabilities. Our planning department, so that was budgeted for 182,000. Actual was 275. This came down to our contractor and legal expenses. Part of this was offset thanks to our housing initiative grant, and actually got some good news from the province in that regard, in that we didn't spend the entire amount. It was supposed to be returned by the end of the year based on the original grant agreement. We can actually now use some of that funding in 2026 for additional projects related to that. So the planner is working on those, so we can still use some of that money and help offset their costs for 2026. Building inspection, budget 139, actual 132. That wasn't really anything highlighted in there. Bylaw, so 171, actual was 141. We were under budget on our legal and contracted services through the CRD. Public Works, so they had a budget of $2 million, actually spent 1.8. Heavily under budget on the snow and sanding, about $70,000. And then storm damage also saved about $26,000. And then we didn't do any road maintenance work that was contracted out this year, so about $50,000 in savings. Talking to Public Works this year, they're going to take a look. Probably don't need to use the whole 50, but the underage, The under budget amount for snow and sanding ends up going into our snow and sanding reserve, so basically just reallocated there. Our Parks and Rec budget, so we had 151,000 there. Actual spend was 126, so under budget. But our grounds maintenance was over budget due to some damage to the public washrooms, and that was adjusted for. Might have to spend a little more money on cleaning it up, but nothing big. And then school, so we had a total budget of 262,000. Actual spend was 229. This does not involve the actual repayment of the borrowing from the general capital reserve. So there'd be another 42,500 on there. But the big thing that was showing there on page 5 and 6, this wonderful table. So we broke out all the revenue and where it's coming from and allocated expenses based on the total square footage that each area takes up. So the gym and the classrooms and the leases and MACA, etc. Showing here's the actual net cost for each one based on amortization, debt repayment, or borrowing. Sorry. Overall, ends up at about $180,000 being subsidized in there. How you want to word it, how you want to take care of it. I don't know. Leave it up to council. Capital projects. So we spent just over $1.1 million there. 530,000 came from grants, 578,000 came from our reserves. So most of it, again, went into public works, 851,000. This was for roads and the culvert that they worked on. It was under budget because the additional road that we wanted to pave would have put us over that 1.03 million. So we cut that, moved it over into 2026. Administration came in under budget at 183 versus 185, so that was the server roof type of thing. Fire also under budget. This was because of our we didn't actually put down a deposit for engine number 6, so we moved that off into 2026, 2027. I'm working with the new chief on how they want to handle that. Parks and Recreation, so $10,000 was budgeted for in there. We spent 32. Most of that relates to those stairs. And then our school, so we had budgeted 35,000 for capital repair. $20,000 we've allocated into the septic tank replacement. That ends up happening in 2029, I believe. So we're just saving up now, have money put aside for the big replacement that's going to be needed. I think that might be. And then my little warning here. All these numbers are subject to change, still have to go through the audit. I don't imagine there'd be anything too significant. There are the odd 2025 invoices that are still sneaking through, so hoping to keep it under a material level that we don't have to record them, but if we do, I'll blame the auditor on that one. So at the end of the day, you currently have a surplus of 681,000. If council would like to discuss how they'd like that allocated kind of going forward, I can come back when we've had the final numbers presented from the auditor with the actual reserve report. We can start booking money into those specific reserves. Just remind that we do have a current $3 million infrastructure deficit, and there is significant cost coming from the RCMP, about $500,000. That reserve is going to run out in 2029. The district right now is looking at a 16.5% tax increase for the police side every year for the next 5 years. So if you want to throw more money in there, we can spread that out and drag it out till 2030, 2031. I think that basically covers everything. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Creed. Okay, committee. So now's the opportunity for us to discuss the fourth quarter report. Any questions for Mr. Creek while he's here? Councillor Gray.
If I may, through the chair, Mr. Creek, can you just run over that last bit of information you offered about the police budget and reserve? I just didn't catch it.
Through the chair, you bet. So because of the RCMP costs increasing by about $500,000 over the next 5 years, and the police reserve running out by 2029, in order to smooth all of that over, the district is looking at a 16.5% tax increase over the next 5 years, each year. And so that 16.5% is not equivalent to $14.43 like the regular one, but it is still a significant amount in the end.
So just to clarify, so at the moment we have the reserve that we're using, the reserve will run out in 2029. And so it's from that point on, there would be a 16, are we talking 16.5% each year?
Through the chair, no, we're starting with a 16.5% increase starting in 2026. And it'll be 2027, 2028, 2029, and 2030. And the residents of the district will then be fully taxed for what the RCMP is costing, rather than relying on that reserve to save some money. So 2026, there's $434,000 that is going to be pulled from that reserve to offset that RCMP increase. And then you still need a 16.5% tax increase in 2026 to only use up $434,000.
So that's a baseline tax increase before any other increases for the district services.
Through chair, correct. That one is baked in
16.5%.
for the police tax, not for the district tax.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Shukin, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, question, and also the police reserve fund. What I'm seeing, I guess, in taking a bit of a snapshot in time is my recollection is that the police fund was supposed to go for about 4 years, beginning in 2022, is that if I'm recalling correctly. And we still have $1.1 billion in the police reserve. And it strikes me we've underutilized it, and that's kind of news in a way. So for example, as I'm looking at it, the projected amount in 2023 was $69,000, as opposed to I think it was over $200,000. The budget in 2025 is $300,000, and the rest of it is $300,000. So I'm wondering if there's room to access potentially a little bit this year to top up some of the amounts. But I get your point. I mean, I think you're showing us a future where police and possibly is significantly where we are now. I think we've just been lucky. So I wonder if Mr. Quick has any comments.
Through the chair, yes, the district has been very lucky. So the contract called for 5 officers a number of those years. The RCMP could not provide that. So we had budgeted for the 5. When they provided 3.2, came in well under budget. Hence why you didn't need to use everything that was budgeted for the police reserve. We've kind of run out of luck on that in that they've actually found staffing, good and the bad, right? You got them out there, but you got to pay for them. And so right now, how that reserve has been allocated, I've used it to smooth out that tax increase, where it's just the same thing every year for 5 years. If you want more to be used in 2026, then it just means there's going to be a bigger spike in the tax in 27 or 28 or 29. So you can certainly do that if you want.
One more question for Mr. Creek, if I could, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks very much for delivering yet another healthy surplus. And I'm finding myself with questions about how the surplus relates and supports the call that you made to top up our reserves to deal with infrastructure gaps. Will that help? Again, is there a way of building on our successes here, maybe looking at alleviating that 1% that we already allocated? And the one thing I will point out to you is that we had more significant surplus the previous year. So I'm just wondering how our surpluses equate to topping up the reserves that you asked us to consider.
Through the chair. So yeah, right now you're looking at a $3 million annual deficit in the infrastructure. So if you took that entire 600,000, you'd still be short 2.4 for 2025. It would certainly help. I'm not going to say that you should get rid of that 1%. The more I've kept thinking about it, I really should have just came and said, you need to do 5% every year, right? And just kind of lock that in. It'll help a little bit, right? We can start, if you allocate the full 680,000 off to general capital, we start making more interest on it, and that would fill in a little bit, but we're nowhere close to $3 million. So I'm not going to say you should reduce that 1% allocation for 2026 and 27, 28, 29, 30. Keep that. I'd argue you should probably even do more than that just because of the deficit that the district is looking at. And then we'll say that it is lower than what there was in 2024. 2024 was just over $800,000. And the only reason we have a $680,000 surplus is because we used up $280,000 worth of accrued liabilities. And so really the surplus should have been just under $400,000. And so that I'd preface that you're probably looking at less than that for 2026, barring anything else, because I've used up all the accrued liabilities that we can have. E-com's getting higher, RCMP costs are coming in higher, wages are coming in higher for staff. Like utilities are going, like Fortis is increasing their cost by 11%. They're not a big number, but all the utilities are going up, insurance is going up. Again, without anything special, we're kind of need as much money to go into those reserves as possible right now.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Good reminders of what's ahead.
Thank you. Mayor Little, do you have any comments?
I just wanted to go back to the policing because I think it's important to reiterate where we've been and where we're going. At the beginning of the term, we decided on 5 officers for the district to be chosen for the West Shore RCMP, and this included our inclusion in the Vancouver Island Major Crimes Unit, the VIMQ, as well, which is really important. Through no fault of our own or nothing that we did, the West Shore RCMP couldn't provide those 5 police officers, mostly, as I understand it, through recruiting. They just couldn't supply that, so the budget has been underutilized. And so it's about 200, if I recall correctly, about 200,000 per police officer, plus the accommodations, equipment, and everything. And so if we don't have a complement of 5 officers, the accommodation piece also goes down. So the rent, we're not paying rent for those police officers and for a full complement of administrative support for those 5 officers. But at some point, we will be at that. So I think it's wise for us to contribute to reserves because at some point we won't have our policing reserves. We'll have used those all, but also we won't have other. Well, I guess we could transfer. No, we can't actually. Can we from general reserve? Could we use? We could use not the capital, but the general operating reserve.
Through the chair? Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
Totally.
But anyways, I think it's wise that because we know we're going to have the full expense at some time. I think it's wise to save for the rainy day.
Good point. Any other comments? Mr. Creek, I'd like to invite you to the table to have a more comfortable discussion. Councillor Gray, did you have any other?
Yeah, I had a few questions just going through the quarterly report, and I think they're relatively straightforward. Just to understand it, under the fire department section on page 4, through the chair, Mr. Creek, you mentioned that the 62,000 of recoverable training costs was over budget, then partially offset by a larger amount. Is that just the nature of the beast that it doesn't cover it entirely?
Through the chair. So due to our recent turnover of the fire chief, there's a little bit of paperwork still outstanding. So right now, the numbers that we have on here, the revenue does not offset the expense. Now, I was talked to the former fire chief last week about it. She gave some additional information to Mr. Lamb on the weekend, so we should be able to get that number, that revenue, to actually offset the entire cost of it, and then have a little surplus.
That's helpful, thank you. And then like resident Jennifer Burgess, I caught the reference to debt in the school, and we have talked about that in the past, and debt was used, as you say, year after year, and yet it's not actually a debt, it's just a repayment plan, I suppose. But I think that might be a good one to reword in future. Because it's as if we have a debt at the moment. We don't have a debt, we just want to build up that reserve, I believe. I wondered about the mention of the school management plan, and I recall we had a management plan, but I just wanted to confirm, did we ever finalize or approve the idea of the 60% cost recovery? It was in the documents, but I don't know if we ever completed that piece. And I don't know if you remember, Mr. Creek, but.
Through the chair. Good question. When I was going through this, was that actually finalized? I wasn't too sure. I can go back and ask the CAO. Does he recall whether or not that was actually completed, or were we still working on some finer detail?
Great. To my recollection, we didn't ever finalize it, but I think it would be good to finalize it, and we can work from it. But I appreciate that. By the way, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this document. It's quite a bit of effort there. When I turn to the community support section, I just wondered if we might learn, and maybe not today, but you mentioned that the very first sentence, in 2025, the district provided grants, resources, below market rent, and tax exemptions totaling $252,000. And I'm not asking maybe for right now, but if we could get a sense of, well, which were the grants, what were the resources, and what was the below market rent? Tax exemptions, I think we know from all the work that you've done on that. What I guess I'm curious about is, particularly the below market rent, is that to do with which arrangements?
Through the chair. So below market rent is for our cricket pitch, the community house, MACA, and the preschool.
Thank you. Well, if we could get a table, that would be great on all of them there. I probably would say that rather than below market rent, I think the dollar that MACA pays and the dollar that the community association pays is not so much below market rent as simply a consideration. We haven't thought about charging a rent before, but it is, and that keeps those groups going. I'm not sure, so maybe I'm just quibbling with the language. The same section, and we heard from, I think it was Morgan Yates about this. I was looking again, I'm struck as you are, I think, with the $3 million funding grant gap. I mean, this is obviously a very serious issue, and you brought it for us before. And I was disappointed to see it tagged up opposite the community support, because it seems to me that it's actually a big problem over our entire budget. And what action should we or could we take? And you mentioned a moment ago the idea of even a larger contribution to our reserves. So I tend not to think of it the same way as it bouncing off of this question, but overarching that funding gap is a big issue everywhere. Would you agree with that?
Through the chair. It is an overarching impact on the entire budget. That is correct. It's just that right now, the way the district has been run and is being run, there is so little to actually take away from in order to you would actually have to shut down this entire municipality in order to get rid of your infrastructure deficit. You cannot fire enough people or shut down public works and the fire department and all these types of things to get rid of that kind of deficit. And so when I got here, right, the biggest problem was my taxes had gone up too much, and people wanted to blame council for it. I told them, no, this council just showed up at the wrong time because of the RCMP costs, right? They had 2% forever, unfortunately, right? Leaving it to the point of here we don't have enough money in reserves for our infrastructure, and so when you go through all the books, you know, what can you possibly do to actually resolve this through budget cuts and saving some money somewhere without increasing taxes? There's nothing there, right? It's like this place has been run on such a threadbare budget that we can't find it through there. And so when I've presented these reports over the year and a half of we got to find some revenue, there's nothing really to cut. Like I strongly appreciate all of the community things that are going on and the volunteer aspect of it all. Unfortunately, I do not get to record any of that as an offset in financial statements or to pay this RCMP bill that's coming due over the next number of years. And so I look at it like, here's one chance where if people want to contribute their money to those organizations, perfect. We'll take the debt off of everybody else, the expense off of everybody else. Anybody that wants to contribute to those groups, they can. It worked out for the church, right? Like the amount of tithing that happened after the progressive tax thing, they received more than enough to pay for all their taxes because of it, because people wanted to support them. But where this is going, even the $3 million, unfortunately, David previously asked about the road report on what should we spend more, should we spend less, what's going on. Through that, I identified a number of missing assets from our capital listing for bridges and culverts. So that $3 million is even an understatement right now. And so saying people want to quantify what's a need and a want, what's going on, all of those things, people want them. Should it be, and is it an actual need? Not as much as you need the fire hall. You need the RCMP. That you need the staff to fill out these 1,000-page FOI requests. Like, there's so much provincial downloading going on to this district that this was the only thing that we could identify as something here's a little bit of money towards it, and it's still, even if you eliminate that whole thing, right, it's still not going to cover that infrastructure deficit or the RCMP. We're nowhere near it. And so with the hesitancy around development and revenue generation, here's a little bit, and it's still not enough for what we need.
Thanks very much, Mr. Creek. I just want to say that when this came up, a few people were in touch with me about it, and I said, I think the reason is, and you've just explained it, this is the one place where you can find some money as compared to other locations where it really leads to direct service reductions. That's what I'm understanding. And then I think what we heard from Mr. Yates was, yeah, but this is important too. But that's where the balance you're trying to find. So thanks for that response. I guess for me, and you said it a moment ago, I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but the 1% addition to reserves is probably too small. And I appreciate that, you entered the discussion, tried to tell us there was a big problem, and then offered a small solution. And as you're looking at it, we're learning even more. So I guess I say to my colleagues at the table, we should perhaps hear a little bit more from Mr. Creek about, not today, but the issue of, is that 1% sufficient? Is that responsible for us as a council? We're hearing from our CFO that it isn't, or at least that's what I'm taking. We got a big problem here, so maybe we can come back to that as a group. But thank you. I get exactly where you're coming from, I think. I had a question on the issue of the accrued liabilities. the amount there is $286,000. And for our district, that seems like a lot of money to have accrued as a liability and not need to pay out. Is there a reason that it's so large?
So,
I hope that's an okay question for if you have the.
So
background.
through the chair, yeah, that when I first looked at it, and then was going through the year end for 2024, just through the working paper, and I'm like, what is all this? Why do we have this? And it was set up in 2022, before you had actually received any bill from the RCMP yet, right? And so they booked in a liability because it's like, hey, we know we're going to have to pay the RCMP for something. There should be like a fourth quarter bill coming in, because that's when it would have taken effect, because the survey. And then in general accounting terms, it should have been used up in 2023 once those bills came in. It should have been offset against there. Now discussing it with when I first got here with the previous accountant, kind of set it up as an additional reserve, right? So you got your regular police reserve where you've saved money diligently into it. This was just an extra one, to give you another buffer. It's really not correct in an accounting format, as accrued liabilities are something that you're going to get rid of the following year, and you're accruing it because you know it's an expense in the following year, and then you just offset it when the bill comes in and take care of it. But there were a number of other items in there. Like there was $20,000 for Crest. That was set up again, like 2019. No idea why nobody wanted to use it. I was like, I'll take it, right? We can build up a nice little, we can add to the surplus for this year. There was another one for fire department software. That when I asked the previous fire chief about that, she said that they stopped using that software in 2021. It was run through Langford, so well, I'm going to get rid of that because it's clearly we're never going to get a bill from that again. And then there's $5,000 for the tree commission, so we received a bill this year, $5,000 offset against there. Perfect. We don't have to report an expense, and so it's just trimming it away. It's just not. As a former auditor, I just couldn't let that sit and linger. Just want to make sure everything actually shows up how it is and what's outstanding. So, when those financial statements come out, your liabilities have gone down drastically, and the auditor, I know they'll be like, "Oh, perfect, you got rid of all that thing." Well, yeah, because it didn't make sense to me, and it didn't really make sense to them that it would be outstanding for so long. Just accounting foolery, really.
Thank you so much. That's a very clear response. And in a word, it sounds like cleanup. So thanks for that. It just seemed like a big amount of money to come out in that way, but I hear you. The other question I had, and I guess I'm just a little bit lost on it, the fire truck, this replacement of engine 6, are we not still saving money for that? What the note says is a replacement wasn't found in 2025, and I hadn't realized we were actually at the point of purchase.
Through the chair. So the original plan for 2025 was to find one, put the deposit on, which was about 10% of the total value, so $50,000, and then 2026 was going to be the purchase of it. Talking to the current fire chief about it, saying, hey, if you've got this amount in 2026 and 2027, he's like, that's great if we find something in 2026, but we're not going to get that until 27, 28 anyway. So we are saving still for it. Whether or not that still comes in at $500,000 is anybody's guess. I would kind of say probably not. It's going to be more than that, just because the cost of those things keeps going up. But as soon as we lock in the deposit, then we've locked in the price. So even if it takes a year and a half, we're set with the 2026 price or 2027 price. When we got the new ladder truck in Comox, they bought it for $1.7 million. By the time it got delivered, you get the same truck for $2.1 million. So those things escalate very quickly, unfortunately.
Mayor Little, you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I was just wanting to go back to community support, and I really appreciate your your discussion around that, trying to explain it, that we are such a lean machine here and there's just no place to trim fat. That's why I appreciate you bringing the facts and the numbers forward to us. And I agree it would be great, not only for us at this table, but for the community to understand not just the figure of community support, but what exactly does that entail? And the question that I have for you is, this represents 6.1% of our total municipal tax revenue collected. Is that the norm with other municipalities? Like, where do we sit in terms of our community support? Well, for our allotment of money towards community support in grants and low rent or no rent. Where do we sit?
Through the chair. So looking at, I base everything off of 2024 financial information because that was what's readily available for everybody. So looking through the CRD itself, the average was just over 2.5% for their total tax revenue. Median was 2.75. No, average 2.75. Median was 2.5. Oak Bay was basically the only place that actually had a number that was over 6%. And they've got a significantly larger tax base and tax revenue. Right, their municipal mill rate is 2.5 times what the district of Metchosin is. It's far higher than you would expect from such a small place, but because right, everybody loves volunteers and the community support around it, it's where people want their money to go. When I just look out over the next 5, 10, 20 years of it, I'm like, man, we got to have some money coming from somewhere. Otherwise, people will need to get used to double-digit tax increases for the foreseeable future. And from my initial time here, nobody wanted that. Right? They were mad when it was 6% because of the RCMP. And now you could easily have double that for that entire 5-year financial plan that we're working on right now.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for that explanation. I was just wondering if we could just pivot to some of the comments regarding roads. There is, as we've talked about, and also with our road management plan, there's a fine line between letting the roads just go to waste because you get sloughing off, and then the roads get to be in such a condition that you have to replace them rather than crack and seal and repair. So I am in favor of repairing roads where needed, but I do agree with some of the comments that we have exceptionally good roads, and maybe we need to have good roads, not necessarily exceptional. I know that some people don't want to use those qualifying words, but I think good roads, good safe roads would be good.
Through the chair, yes. So the report that I'm working on right now for the road replacement and whether or not we should do the $1 million that was spent between 2017 and 2022, or go back to it was $80,000 a year in 2007 through 2010. Right, there was very little until basically the kangaroo replacement happened, and that was $3 million. That's why we ended up setting an optimal reserve level of $3 million for the road reserve. Was okay, we need enough money to replace one. Good idea in theory there, but you need way more than that because the cost of roads are escalating so high, and you have close to 100 kilometers of roads in this district. Now, the road replacement plan that was done 2025, I believe, early 2025, that map shows the vast majority of roads being green, right? They're good condition, nothing going on. There's very few that were actually yellow or red, and something that need to be done. So certainly something that could be delayed while they are in good condition, right? The problem with that is lovely thing of inflation. It just keeps going up, so it does end up costing more to eventually replace them. Trying to find a beautiful balance between replacing, repairing, and waiting for it. Hard to nail down. And then when we add in the fact that we have also coming out of that replacement reserve has to be the bridges and the culverts, which, as we've seen with Neil Road being 400,000, it's not a small amount. There are over 20 large culverts in the district of Machosen. So you're looking at millions of dollars over the long run. Thankfully, a lot of them are in great condition, even if some of them are 80 years old. And when Public Works looked at them and said, "Oh, you're still good, right? We could have another decade or two of them." So it could be something like 100 years. So it's difficult to quantify exactly how much money you need to save for those things. But the roads are in great condition. Do we need to keep putting as much into them? There will be a point. I'd say once we take care of the reds and the yellows, that should turn red by the time the reds are all taken care of. You should probably slow down, right? And only focus on the ones that need to be done. If you want to take the idea of we're a rural district, people are speeding through here. I've seen it myself. Maybe you want to let a few more cracks come in, maybe a little pothole here or two, just kind of let it go. But we do need to be sure that we do protect the base, because that is the most expensive thing to replace. The top is fairly cheap comparably. So it'll be a delicate balance, but I know with the Public Works crew, following the road replacement plan, getting that checked on every decade, we can get the district in the right way to make sure you're not spending too much money, and then take the interest earned on the road reserve, allocate that to general capital, because the vehicles that are used by Public Works and the fire department, those far outstrip inflation, and they far outstrip what we're going to earn in interest on those reserves. So allocating more of that off to those general capital items would be a good idea. Now, the previous administration was kind of doing that because you are amortizing close to $1 million worth of roads every year, and only 800,000 was being actually allocated to the road reserve. The rest was being put into buildings and equipment. So we can kind of move in that direction as well, rather than just constantly putting it in the roads and maintaining them at such high quality.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. And it is a problem for many communities, municipalities, and in fact, Salt Spring Island, that has a average population about 12,000. They had 2 referendums with a vote to incorporate, and it was rejected both times. The major considerations were, we're going to be responsible for our roads and our policing, and our taxes are going to go way up. And so they have a lot of roads as well. I don't know about 100 kilometers, but close to it. And they've chosen to stay unincorporated because of all those expenses that we are dealing with. So it's good to point out but it's not unique to Machosen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shukin, do you have any other questions as we start to close in on the report for the Q4?
I don't. I will make a comment though about Mr. Creek. Thank you very much for clarifying the amount of support that we can provide organizations and through volunteers. Based on your explanation, it looks like you're very much doing our part to support the volunteer base in Machosen. And one thing I will point out is that all of council volunteers and you're out being very active, so we're not deaf, dumb, and blind to the need to support volunteers as well. But thank you very much. And, appreciate Mr. Free coming to the table.
Great, thank you. Okay, so, and I appreciate that last comment. That kind of is a segue into the next thing that I would like to bring up. And it's to do with our farmers. In listening to this very detailed, in-depth discussion, I was quite surprised that we actually had a surplus, because we were trying to get it so we wouldn't have so much surplus. But with that, and where we're going to, what we're going to do with that is something that we'll need to have a discussion as well. And I think we've got some insight now, some direction of different things. However, I did want to bring up one small request, and that is to bring a recommendation forward that the Finance Committee recommend to Council to establish an agricultural area plan reserve fund. You'll recall that in 2024, we had completed the agriculture area plan, and at this point, we've not been able to implement too many things in it. There are a lot of action items, and the Ag Committee has stewed and toiled over a lot of different things. We'll hear more from them at a meeting presentation at a meeting on Monday. So what I would like to suggest to help our local agricultural economy is to consider a reserve, and that the Finance Committee recommend to Council to establish the Agriculture Area Plan Reserve Fund, and that $25,000 be allocated from surplus to reserve to start the implementation of the Metchosin Agriculture Area Plan. That's a motion for me. If I can have a seconder, we can have a discussion.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Gray. So the District of Metchosin, as I say, had adopted the plan and identified priorities and actions to support agricultural viability, food security and stewardship, and the long-term sustainability of farming within this community. The implementation of the agriculture plan will require dedicated funding to support initiatives such as education, infrastructure improvements, partnerships, research, and community engagement. Establishing such a reserve will provide a transparent and responsible mechanism to allocate and manage funds for the phased implementation of the Metchosin Agriculture Area Plan over time. So the $25,000, as I had consulted with staff about this, of what dollar value or anything, and so it was suggested that the $25,000 be over a 5-year period. It's not in the resolution here, but this is some background information for you. Any questions for me on that? Councillor Gray?
Yeah, I'm happy to support the discussion here about this. One thing would be that just off the top, without having the agricultural plan in front of me, I'm not totally sure what the money would be spent on. I recall that the district has very little to do with the agricultural plan as compared to the farmers themselves. And we do have some things that we're meant to do, the district, but I don't recall what those are. And so it makes it hard to vote on a dollar amount. But just today, but I get the point here. I wanted to, though, through the chair, ask Mr. Creek a question, or maybe I'll make a statement and ask if that's more or less it. Is the timing correct today for this? I seem to recall that we look at the reserve balances later in the year, and we haven't really gone through a decision process around the surplus and when would that happen. In other words, I'm thinking this is a little premature, but Mr. Creek maybe can help us with that.
So through the chair, there will be a reserve report that comes out once the numbers are finalized with the financial statements, but it shouldn't drastically change from where we're at with 680. Maybe with some weird things that happen, maybe you get under 600,000. So say if you want to discuss allocating 25,000 to the agricultural area plan and implementing that, I know the district did spend a significant amount of time and money developing that, and then we haven't actually allocated anything in the budget in 25 or 26, or like this 26 through 2030 draft. So getting something set up for it, not outside the realm of normal. And since we're not dealing with such a small surplus, you could allocate it to that if you wanted to. And if you wanted to wait until the report in late April, early May, something you can certainly do too.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Shukin.
So I may have missed part of this, but you're talking about building up to $25,000 over 5 years. Is that correct?
You know, allocating it for 5 years was what I was guided to consider for this. So it's 25,000 over 5 years. So yeah, the 5-year financial plan is bound time.
Yeah. While I'm open to the concept and like to support our growers, it would be good to have more information about what the money is spent on. And then there's also the potential of going for grants for certain initiatives, and then also I think the big thing is clarity on what the money will be spent on. So and I again, it would be maybe good to review the ag plan itself.
Sure. So to give an example of one of the things that the Agriculture Advisory Committee has been trying to find information on and support, and they were looking for an agricultural coordinator, somebody that could work with the local agricultural industry here, set up a website, have an online market. We do have a Sunday market here. I know myself, I've explored at night market in an adjacent community because that was also an interest that they had. But an online market similar to what they do in Moss Street is what a coordinator could do. What we did learn really quick was what I learned really quick, because I've now applied for 3 grants. One is pending. I don't know what's happening with it yet, but 2 we didn't succeed at. There are very few grants, if any, to cover off like a wage. So a coordinator would be in excess of $30,000 a year. That's a part-time wage. They were also looking at so an online market, a website to promote Machosen agriculture. We have limited resources on our district website, but this is the agricultural community itself. So the agriculture plan is what supports the community, and in that we have the Machosen Producers Association, so that's the farmers market. We have the Machosen Grown Society, that's the up-and-coming community garden. They're also applying for grants themselves. And then you have the 2 other segments of the agricultural part of our community, and that is people who have businesses on ALR land and people who have farms on non-ALR land farming. Still, they're all contributing in some part to growing food for our community and our region. And it's been identified by the Ag Committee to where we're going to generate that income is the broader region. In order to do that, they cited having a coordinator. Well, that costs a lot of money, and the district isn't in the business of supporting businesses per se, but we are here to support, arts and culture and parks and trails and our agricultural community in some factor. And as one of the things I'm just saying here, like we've done farm forums, they're going to do a speaker series. We do the best we can to keep it shoestring budget, or a lot of times you could say volunteering. So encouraging people to grow more food, and we know that the food security on this island is minimal. It's less than 3 days supply if another pandemic or ferry shut down or whatever. So education is a big part of it, encouraging people how to grow, land matching, there's all sorts of things, but those factors do take funds to bring people together, to people to put these, to educate and have somebody to do grant writing and that sort of thing. So yes, we could apply for grants. I have, as you may be aware, a couple years ago or a year ago, I applied for one at the beginning of 2025 and again later in 2025, and I just did another one recently. So a lot of people are jockeying for grant money. It's just not there. So this was just a small ask to support our local farmers, just so they could get a lift to go in the right direction. We'll hear more about that again on Monday night at the cow meeting. So Just thought since how we did have this extra money and we hadn't considered this before of creating anything to implement the agricultural plan, I was going to take the opportunity tonight, as I have, to explore it with my colleagues here at the table. Maribel, go ahead.
I think it's very laudable, and we do have this agricultural plan that we want implemented, but it'd be helpful for me, since the first time I heard about it was about 3 o'clock today, and I need to wrap my head around what specific projects the money is going to go towards. As far as I know, the coordinators that coordinate farmers markets, they're not paid coordinators, right? They're volunteers.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the one at Moss Street is paid or isn't. I don't know.
So the coordinator at Goldstream in Langford and in Machosen here is not paid.
The Goldstream and the Goldstream Market and Machosen Market are the exact same person, and I again don't know if the manager gets paid. I'm not sure.
I don't think the manager gets paid. So I think this is a great idea. I just want to know what the projects are and
Sure.
and how will that be? How will it be spent? Will it come back to presumably a committee of the whole with, we want to spend X amount, and is 25 enough? 25,000 enough?
Okay.
That's that's like a 0.25 FTE. That's very hard to get anything done with just a quarter of a position.
Right. So the 25,000 I'm referring to for the reserve is not for wages per se. It's for projects. Right. So as an example, each year the Ag Committee and all our advisory committees get a $500 line item in the budget, and that goes towards, I don't know, presentation to the community. It doesn't really go that far. In the past, as an example, Ag Committee has purchased the 2 signs you see coming into Machosen, either Machosen Road or Happy Valley Road, saying when the market is open, and that was for the market. Other things that they're looking at right now is they're looking at a banner so they can actually have a booth here on Machosen Day, and people can learn more about agriculture there. Some promotional materials, that sort of thing, putting on workshops. That'll be the educational component. Possibly a tour similar to what we did with the arts and culture, which was the Stinking Fish Studio tour. Once we can start doing those things, then yeah, there could be other grants, as long as we've got some seed money to sort of start with that. Go ahead, Councillor Gray.
Thanks for that explanation. I'm going to vote against the motion, mostly because I think I appreciate it coming up tonight. But if we could get a description of what's, what the idea is, and reflect back to the ag plan and what commitments we made there, I think that would be useful to us before considering the idea much further. I also think that it may be a good idea to tee it up so that we're lined up with the CFO in terms of the reserves, and so we can understand a little bit better where the surplus might go. Partly I'm, more information is needed, but I'm also struck by the issue of our need to build the reserves. So there'll be a balancing act there in the end, but more information to help us make that decision. So with appreciation, but I'm going to vote against the motion.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Well, thank you, Mayor Little. And Councillor Johnson, I wonder if you might withdraw the motion and bring it back when we need. Thank you. I do realize you're giving us some ideas now, but it would be great to have a document on a single page. So I might suggest withdrawing and bringing it back when there's more information.
Okay. Mayor Little, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest you withdraw it.
Okay. All right, I will withdraw it, and the Ag Committee will be meeting in about 2 weeks, so I will report back to them on this discussion as well. Thank you. Is it okay to withdraw that?
Yes.
Second, Councillor Gray. Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Gray.
So just returning to the report from Mr. Creek, thanks again. And through the chair, I wanted to ask a question, and I have raised this before, but, well, at first I had a question, which is the completed projects. Where did they land in terms of meeting their budgets? And maybe that's not easy to answer just now, but we do know the Weirs Beach stair was over budget considerably. I think we started at 15,000 and ended up, I believe I heard $39,000. So that was a big one. What I'm wondering, and maybe it's not for Mr. Creek, but the CAO and through the chair, what mechanisms are in place to manage these special projects where we authorize a specific dollar amount and we're going to exceed the dollar amount? Do we come back to council for authorization? How does that work?
Through the chair. So for all the projects, other than the Weird Beach stairs, everything came in under budget. So the community house parking lot, all the road work, the fire hall roof, although that was, we didn't have a budget for that, that just needed to be done. What else was on that list? Like the municipal hall roof, actually that guy came in a little bit over budget, but server upgrade, that was under budget. The bike rack and bus shelter, that was done under budget. Still waiting on more information for the bulk water station. They're still working on it. They got the location picked out. Should be finishing up the engineering pretty soon. But then for when they end up going over budget, there is policy to come back to council based on it going over by a specific percentage. That's why we didn't come back for the municipal hall roof. And then it's just based on where they are at the project. It's like, are we just going to stop in the middle of it and leave it dead in the water with the Weird Beach stairs? Like, are we just going to stop halfway down and say, okay, let's leave that and let it get washed away again? So it kind of comes down to what exactly the project is and where we're at when we find out that it is ending up going over budget.
Great, thanks. Maybe we could, staff could provide council a copy of the policy. That would be a help. Thank you. If we could have that in the minutes.
Mayor Little, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the Weird Beach stairs. As I remember the conversation at least 2 years ago, I think council underestimated what it would take. I think that was our fault. It clearly was a bigger project than what $15,000 would pay for. I remember the conversation, and I remember us, being under pressure not to escalate those. But it looking back on it, it wasn't very realistic, and it is a good community resource. For the people of that area near Pearson College, in particular the students, to allow them safe passage to the beach rather than walking along the road. So I think it's a good investment. Saying that, we've got at the other end of Mitchell's in here, we've got the Woody Beach stairs, which we are now responsible for, I think from about 2016 or 17. That was taken on by the municipality from the CRD, even though it is a CRD park and was a CRD responsibility. And so hopefully we don't get a collision of the king tides with climate change and everything else, that those stairs will be secure for a number of years. But we should have enough in reserves for that kind of an emergency situation, because I know people of that area and visitors certainly use those stairs. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that, those the base of Woody Beach stairs also went through 2 major repairs after the installation. So sometimes Mother Nature is much stronger than we anticipate. Councillor Gray.
Just didn't want to lose in the comments being made, to lose the point I was trying to make, which is budget management. Not the question of whether or not the stairs are needed or not needed, or whether they're good or bad or anything, but how do we manage this so that the council approves a certain dollar budget I understand it overruns by, you know, this size of this project by $1,000, fair enough. But when it's more than double the cost that we allocated, I wonder what the process is. So I'll look at the policy when we get it and just see how that works. Thank you.
CAO Pitt, can you help us answer some of those questions? They were asked during public participation as well, about cost overages and who makes it at what point, that sort of thing. Are you able to answer that right now?
Yeah, I can talk about it. To Councillor Gray's comments, which are valid, reporting. I mean, if we don't have a specific policy on reporting on projects, the quarterly finance reports would be a suitable location to do a quick report on where we're at with various capital projects. Some of the bigger capital projects have a more robust reporting process through advisory committees, and then up to council, through committee of the whole to council. And yeah, so some of the spending approvals that are in place include operating expenses for damages to things. So been on, I'm sure council's aware that we repair a lot of things throughout the year based on our operating budget, and there's spending approvals within that budget. So yeah, that's it.
Councillor Jones.
Yes, Councillor Shukin, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. You know, and there probably are some learnings that we should take forward with budget planning and project management. The one thing I will say about the moving stairs is I believe the cost includes staff time as well. What I'm to understand is that the staff is much of the work was done with internal planning, some of the creativity and just drawing on internal resources like this secondary, and hopefully we can draw on in the past or in the future as we go. The one thing, just back to Mary Lynn's comments, is I think we cheaped out that we had initially allocated $15,000. We did not know realistically how to plan. To Mr. Curry, I'm sorry, yeah, Mr. Lyons, correct, so I think as we go along and look at that, what are actually quite complicated projects that we have to keep, you know, in reality, in terms of building infrastructure. One thing I will say is year after year, we tend not to spend money on either trails maintenance, trails development, and that's because we have a lot of volunteers who are not doing much of this work. So there's a comment we earlier about maybe clawbacks of things were over budget, and I'm wondering if there's a deadpan provision that we can add to if somebody isn't used. So thank you.
Did you say a dump in?
I said not in provision. That's a new concept that I've just invented.
Okay, good. We weren't quite sure how sophisticated that terminology was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just in-
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, Councillor Shukin, you said cheaped out before. We had an engineer's report that said this was doable for $15,000. So we did have professional advice on that. We were looking at a rustic trail. I'm not, but we needn't go over that. It was really the management of the money I was wondering, and I think we've had a response from both the CEO and the CFO, which are helpful. So thanks. I had a different question, which was in relation, maybe I could ask the CFO. When I'm looking at the report then from last year, I was focused on the reserve question, and I saw we put in the reserve, let me just read this right. Transfers from reserves, 1.3 million. Transfers to reserves, 1.8 million. So it didn't, we're not putting very much money in every year. I mean, these are large numbers, but it's really like $500,000 we put in last year, something like that. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's where we're, maybe I can use words, cheaping out. We need more money in those reserves.
Through the chair. Yep. Yeah. So you end up netting that out, right? The 1.3 coming out of them, 1.8 million going in. And most of that again comes back to it's either amortization or it's related to our the gas tax that or community works fund that comes in from the province for 300,000, that type of thing. So it doesn't right now it does not meet what the requirement is for infrastructure based on our current estimates. I guess to Jay's point on that whole stair thing, it was close to $20,000 of wages just for our staff to put all that in. So like the materials were actually less than half the total cost. I think just the hand railing on it came in at $7,000. So anyway.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so seeing no further comments of the Q4, is that correct? Looking around the table. Okay, so there's a motion here that the financial report, fourth quarter of 2025, be received for information.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to 3B, which is the 2026-2023 draft financial plan. Mr. Creek, can you share your report with us on that, please?
Through the chair, thank you very much. Okay, so this is an update to the draft financial plan from our previous meeting on January 22nd. A few more tidbits have come in since that time. We'll first cover off the questions that arose at that January 2022 meeting. There was an inquiry about the ditching and culvert work that's been delayed due to the costs in the past. Most of that cost relates to the disposal of what's dug up on the side of the road. Sometimes it can be contaminated, which ends up with significant hauling and disposal costs, and that's why it was been delayed and put off. Talking with Public Works, we're looking at about $21,000 a day, and doesn't really say how much can be actually done. Depends on how filled in the culvert is. If it's a relatively easy one, they can go through 1 kilometer in a day. If it's a really difficult one, there's lots of brush to do, then you can get less than half of that. So from 2013 to 2015, you had an annual budget of between $100,000 and $110,000 a year. And then in 2022, we were up to $100,000. But that was when we didn't have these disposal costs. This new regulation from basically the province on the disposal ended up putting a kibosh on that work. So in 2025, we budgeted for $65,000. We spent $44,000. And Public Works indicated that was doing a lot of minor maintenance, no removal of overgrowth. And so we've been looking at that. They indicate that you probably need close to a $200,000 annual budget for ditching and culverts to get that back on track. So something to consider. There's another question about freedom of information requests. And so I've just briefly talked on that in the previous report. So in 2025, we spent $14,400. Now we just had a very large one kind of wrap up in January, and that one cost $14,000 on its own. And we just got another bill for another $5,400 for February, so we're already at $20,000. In this budget, I bumped it up to $35,000 for FOI, and now realizing that is unlikely to be sufficient for the year. One thing we can do is there's a reserve for legal consulting work. We could take money out of that rather than increase taxes for this, but that FOI work seems to be never ending, and it is putting a significant amount of pressure on our deputy corporate officer. And so we'll have to budget for this kind of going up every year going forward. Council requested a breakdown. We had put in a request to add $25,000 in for our planning contractor to come in for an extra day a week in 2026. So that's been attached on the back. So you can see what she's planning to do, and hopefully can get it all done in 2026 if the additional day is approved. And then council also asked about installing new speakers in the back of council chambers to help everybody hear. We got a quote for $3,600 for the equipment and installation. And so we can fund that out of our current amount that we have for municipal hall minor equipment. We don't need to increase the budget or anything. So, on to the bad news. Number one, you'll see there's a number of changes in costs for the district in the 2026 to 2030 draft. Big one was public works wages. I had unfortunately understated that in the previous draft financial plan. That was due to an error with the overhead recovery rate for the public works staff. It wasn't capturing all of the benefits and additional costs from having the staff. The overhead recovery rate essentially takes all the benefits, the vacation time, sick time, pension, etc., and then we spread that over all the different segments inside of public works, like snow removal, ditching, culvert shouldering, that type of thing, just to show what the true cost is for that, rather than having it sit up by itself. So that's been corrected. Ecom 911. So they sent in their first bill for 2026, and that showed was on par with what their initial estimate was going to be. But then it shows that NG 911 costs for about $25,000 is being covered by the province for 2026. And that is being covered through a grant from the province. When I reached out to their director of finance, he said we should probably be budgeting and that the province is not going to be covering that come 2027. I think everybody's well aware of their fiscal position right now. And so it seems unlikely that they are going to provide that funding going forward. So that added up to $26,521 based on a reasonable estimate of inflation. So that again impacted our police reserve, and that cost of tax increase going up by 16.5% for the foreseeable future. Next up, we adjusted the grant and aid to cover the permissive tax exemption. So we bumped that up to $107,000, which is $12,000 higher than the previous draft financial plan. Next up was security at the school. So this has become a bit of an issue for our tenants. They were getting sick and tired of the doors being unlocked and lights on, that type of thing. And this was previously done by our fire chief, who lived almost kitty corner to the school. So she just took that on herself. As a district employee, she could do that. Based on provincial legislation, you have to be either an employee or a licensed security person to actually lock a door and set an alarm code. And so now that we don't have any district employees here after 8 p.m. to go lock it up, we've reached out to a security service, and they now come by at night after everybody's left, make sure the door has been locked, windows are closed, lights are off. And they've been doing that, but that comes in at roughly $11,500. And then on top of the fire chief leaving, the majority, if not all of fire departments, the fire chief has a vehicle that they take so they can respond to calls immediately rather than having to run back. Previous fire chief, again, lived right next to the fire hall, so she didn't need a vehicle to get to and from work. She could just run over here, hop in a department vehicle, and take off to the scene. So we are currently estimating that if we can get a used truck with the additional kitting, we're looking at about $70,000. When I was having my budget discussion with the fire chief yesterday, he's actually looking for 2 vehicles because right now we've got 1 vehicle for 4 staff to take out. So if somebody's off on a call, then our fire smart coordinator can't go anywhere, our operations officer can't go do building inspections, number of different issues. So we're actually looking for 2 used trucks. He's found a couple that be roughly $60,000 to $70,000 a piece. I'll really put one into this budget because that's all I had at the time. Something council can consider going forward here. Another thing that came up was the ALR change. So I showed BC assessment information that showed the district of Chosen had lost 27 ALR properties in 2026 compared to 2025. BC assessment had to do a bit of a deep dive on this problem. I put in the legislation that this was related to in the ALC Act. It, at the end of the day, just means that those 27 properties have lost the 50% exemption on the school, hospital, and transit assessments. So all of their taxes are going to go up based on the taxing authorities. It doesn't affect the district taxes because district taxes are based on the general assessment, but the school tax, the hospital tax, the transit tax, all of those will increase for all of those 27 properties. Nothing we can do about it. The district received our final bill from Langford for civilian staffing for the RCMP. And this was much higher than anticipated, as their calculations for the first half of the year weren't done on an accrual basis. So they were missing vacation and sick time. So that resulted in a much larger overall cost for 2025. And when I was discussing the whole issue with them, they were estimating that their cost for 2026 is going to be $185,000. And we had originally budgeted $135,000, so we're talking about another $50,000 increase there. Add that on to ecom, you're looking at about $75,000 total costs, and it just goes up from there, unfortunately. Number 8, another problem that came up was the Lombard trees over there. There was an arborist report back in 2024 about the dangers of the current health conditions of those trees and what they're going to be falling over on somebody, causing injury, damage to property, that type of thing. This can be funded through our accumulated surplus. We were having a discussion actually with staff this morning, found out that the CRD is going to be replacing some asbestos concrete pipe that actually runs down Lombard, so we might be able to actually lay this for a year, and then they can come in and actually take care of that for us, fingers crossed, and won't have to come out of our budget, but we'll wait for some more information on that one. And then also, because of the change in the fire chief, I've removed the training revenue and expenses from the fire department on the assumption that the new chief is not going to do it at the same level. He's basically concurs to that idea. And so this ended up with a net loss of $15,000 for the district, because I had $71,000 of revenue and $56,000 of expense. We can always add it back if he changes his mind or things come about. It sounds more that there's gonna be training going on with other surrounding districts, municipalities, but it's more of just a cost recovery. So we'll bring them in, take their cash, just to offset our internal costs, but it won't be the kind of revenue driver that the previous chief was doing. And so pretty much all of these adjustments reflect changes to service levels or service provider rather than inflationary pressures that are coming down the pipe as well. And so I've provided a table here giving the overall department changes, where general government was 1.8 million and 5,000. Now we're up to 1.846. Again, this was because of our lovely FOI contractor charges, the tax exemption increase, and then benefit increases as well, as our collective agreement is nearing completion, thankfully. Protective services, again, this went up because of our RCMP and econ costs. Development services, benefit increases, transportation. So again, that was the overhead recovery adjustment is the big kicker on that one. The tree removal, the additional ditching costs that were added in, but not to the $200,000 level. Roadside trail cleanup. I believe Councillor Donaldson or Councillor Schugan was kind of mentioning the trails. Volunteers take care of the trails inside of parks, but the roadside trails are the responsibility of Public Works. And then we've also had to increase shouldering due to the costs from 2025, factoring that into the new road capital replacement plan that we have for 2026. And then also their benefits as well went up. And then Parks, Rec, and Culture. So this is basically just the security cost of the school being added in. So we've got a total increase of $219,000. And because of those changes and the loss of revenue from the fire department, we're looking at a total tax increase of 9.87%. That includes all the policing and everything else. If you would like to change anything that you've seen here or anything else that you can identify in the schedules, let me know. We can come back with a new one, or perhaps start planning for the open house at the end of March if possible. But we do need to have a final 2026-2030 financial plan adopted by May 14th, along with the tax rates. So, any questions?
Thank you. Mayor Little has to leave for an appointment in about 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. So Mayor Little, do you have any questions for Mr. Creek?
Yeah, I was wondering, through the chair, Mr. Creek, can you talk about the ALR change? I always thought that the ALC was sort of sacrosanct and there wasn't any properties taken out of the ALC. Do you mean that there was changes in people's farm tax? Or is it the ALR status change?
Through the chair, as far as I could determine when I was talking to BC Assessment about it, because they even threw them off, they didn't quite understand where the numbers was coming from. They had to dive in, found this legislation. So I could tell these people were never meant to actually be in the ALR, and so they ended up just losing their exemption that they did have. So it wasn't really the farm status per se. Like they weren't reporting, hey, I've made 2,500 or 10,000. This was based on this other portion of the act that impacted their school, hospital, and transit assessments. So the farm tax exemption is a totally different thing where it just drives the value of the farmland down to 1% of what it could have been.
Okay, thank you for that. And then the second question is regarding the Lombard trees. I think we talked about it, but we didn't come to any conclusion whether we wanted them chopped down, whether we should chop them at 9 feet or take up the road and dig up all the roots. We really didn't come to a conclusion on that. I think that warrants a further discussion, but also it requires quite a bit of public engagement as well, and letting the public know what we're doing, what we will be doing there. We have to do something because it is a liability. I think it's a great idea to collaborate with the CRD when they're doing their pipes, because once you have the diggers on site, the cost goes goes down. So that's good news that potentially we can collaborate with them on that. I had one other, but I've forgotten. I'll come back to them.
On the topic of the trees, when you say CRD, generally they just work one side of the road, correct? Or are they going to be working both sides of that road?
Through the chair, from the discussion this morning, it sounds like they might be doing it down the middle of the road. But if we can kind of convince them, say, hey, do you want to do one side of the road so that way they can take care of those trees for us without having anything coming out of our pocket, and then the district can just pay to remediate the other side. That would be great. But if they do go down the middle with pipes, the roots of those trees are going to be impacted. So if they went down the middle, you might end up just eliminating all of it just because of where those things have gone. We just don't know. So it'll be a very interesting project that unfolds.
For sure. Thank you. Okay.
Once again,
Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
The one thing I heard from a long-term resident is that there's a very special substructure that was developed for Lombard Lane, and it would be interesting to get a handle on if that's true, because the road itself seems really good, and it would be a shame for the circuit to dig it up and maybe there's an option to reroute piping on one side or the other. But and case in point is those trees have been there for a long time, and the road is in really good shape. So again, just a little bit more investigation may be helpful to both parties. So,
As I recall, it wasn't too long ago we did some paving on that road too.
okay, maybe I'm mistaken. But,
So just tear it up now.
The other thing too, I do agree with Gregory that there is a deeper discussion that's needed on what we do with trees and what happens next in terms of that lane. So, that will take months to take to.
Yes, I agree. Councillor Gray, do you have some comments?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, through the chair, Mr. Creek, the Public Works are telling us that To get the ditching back on track, the budget would need to increase by about $200,000. I guess what I'm wondering about is that the concern for like a catastrophic failure of the of roads at different places. If we haven't been ditching in important locations, I take it we don't need a whole district, but there'll be spots where we might be in trouble with an atmospheric river and that kind of thing. And I'm imagining that's what Public Works are talking about, at least within the concept of doing more ditching. So is there advice that we should be increasing the budget? Is this 200,000 in the budget now? I don't think so. No, and so the question for us, I think that you're asking council is, are we prepared to put some more money in there?
Folks, I just have to jump in here. I have a situation I have to deal with, and I have to drop off. If I can come back on, I will. So apologies, but I do have to drop right now.
Thank you.
Watch you later.
Through the chair. So for the ditching culvert, no, I did not have $200,000 in the budget right now for it. We were sitting at about, it was just under $70,000 in total. Talking with Public Works today, they figure if we did 22 days of this, if it's not contaminated, we get the right people, the right time, we can get away with about 130,000 for 2026 is what they're kind of recommending for this one. But they did notice, like in December when it wouldn't stop raining, they did identify a number of ditches and culverts that need to be worked on, and so they are planning to tackle those in 2026. If we can get the budget increase for that amount, we can make sure that they tackle all the problem ones that were identified, and then we can kind of take a look for 2027. Okay, can we get you down to just 100,000? There's a couple of things in the background that will also end up impacting these total costs that we can unfortunately talk about. But if a few things fall our way, the cost can come down.
So we should return to this in a minute, just as to what to do there, because this is one of those issues where, I guess, as the mayor said a moment ago, if we lose the base, or if we don't upkeep well enough, then we'll have larger costs. And I guess, or the mayor didn't say it, I guess our CFO did, take care about losing the base. So, okay, well I don't know if we should kick that around right now, or.
Can I comment? Yeah, a couple of years ago, at least, we received some correspondence from concerned constituents who were saying the way we do our ditching is very old-fashioned, and that we should be planting our ditches with species that actually do the job of filtering out the toxins and providing a reasonable water course to the culverts. And I would ask actually the Environment Committee to comment on this, because if we're doing things that are out of step with what is done currently in forward-looking communities who want to save the environment and who want to keep rural and all these other things, I think that's worth investigating. So I think it would be a thing for council to ask the Environment Committee what their thoughts on, and there was, I can't remember the author, but there was one constituent who brought forward some information in the correspondence regarding natural ditches and what other communities are doing. So there's a starting point there.
That's correct. Actually, that particular resident myself did tour with Patrick Lucy, who is from Aquitaine, out in Central Saanich, to actually see firsthand what sort of what that ditching kind of looks like. And some of the ditching out that way it is quite aggressive, similar to what we have here, but there were elements of it where they were using plants and whatnot to filter. So there's kind of like a time and a place for that. So it would be good for us to learn and to understand from Public Works what areas that could or maybe not apply to. So certainly, I think it would be fruitful for Mias to bring back some information on that with us, because they're
Yeah, I
more
think so. And
expertise.
Patrick Lucy was a contractor at the new Handy Dart Center, where they had put in the natural ditchings and trying to divert around the natural stream. So he would be a good resource, or people that had worked with him would be a good resource for that.
Yes, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I can certainly take that to me, ask for some ideas. I expect it's an engineering question, which we don't have the expertise on. Me ask, but I'd certainly bring it there and ask the question. But there'd be obviously costs associated with having an engineer involved. But I think what we're hearing though from our CFO and from staff is that we actually have some more serious problems than converting ditches to natural, more natural collection of water. We have places, I'm understanding from Public Works, where we need to dig them out, or we'll lose the road kind of problem, or lose a culvert. And so I'm happy to bring the question to MEASC, but I think we still need to deal with the question of, like, how do we prepare for next year's big rains, essentially. And I don't think that MEASC's advice will change the problem of the atmospheric rivers in the current areas where we are at risk.
Mayor Little?
So I'm just wondering how much do you want us to allocate for the additional projects of ditching and roads, not the roadside trail, the shouldering benefits, I guess.
Through the chair, if council can make a motion to agree to increase the total ditching and culverts budget for 2026 to $130,000, that'd be wonderful. We can get that ball rolling, and then they can know they can book in the contractors that are going to be involved in the work with them, and they can get that planned and set up for early spring, summer.
And I just want some assurance that these are ditches that absolutely are going to fail. They're imminently. It's not just regular maintenance and right.
Through the chair, yep. Because of the heavy rains in December, they identified a number of problem ones that were causing significant issues with the water actually flowing through the culverts safely. So yeah, it's not just for going outside Municipal Hall here and doing a couple scoops and take care of it. They'll be focused on the problem ones that they've identified.
Right. Okay. If so, then I'll make that motion of $130,000 for the, what do you want to call it? Overhead recovery adjustment.
The ditching and culverts.
Ditching and culverts.
Okay, I'll second that. Any other comments on that? Councillor Gray?
Yeah, I'm happy to vote in favor of the motion, but I guess I'd like to see it come back so we can see how it fits with everything else that we're doing here. We're going to talk in a minute, I guess, about next steps, but so the motion is to move the money now or to see how it fits with everything else that we're doing?
Well, now, because we've just heard that we're in imminent danger of some of those culverts being clogged because of the ditching, that's why I asked the question, is this cosmetic or is this something that absolutely needs to be done? What I've heard from the CFO is this absolutely needs to be done. Full stop.
Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to number 2, Ecom 911. Any comments on this? We're pretty obligated to what the facts say, right? The numbers, yeah, can't get around that.
I did want to, though, we mentioned both ditching, but it's not in the report, but our CFO mentioned the shouldering question, and I'd like to ask about that. I can see in lots of places where the roads, particularly where the corners of the roads are meeting, where we have, lack of shoulder, in other words, big potholes that are maybe 6 inches deep or so in a variety of places that are easy to find. And I wonder if we have enough money in our budget to resolve that. I also noticed, just for example, and I haven't walked the whole district, but walk down Taylor Road, a huge section of Taylor Road there is missing shoulder, and the pavement's just going to give way. So I'm curious about that question, and not again to put the CFO on the spot, but how is Public Works feeling? They'll know better the survey of the roads and the shouldering. Are we in good position for that? If we start losing roadway, that's another cost we'd like to avoid. Some money's been booked, but is Public Works happy?
Through the chair, the amount of money right now budgeted for shouldering it's enough for them to cover off what they need to repair when the new road tops are being placed on. It is not enough for them to go around and fix all the failing shoulders in the district. So if you want, this more comes down to the amount of time this team has, right? We've got 4 guys running around the second largest district in the CRD, trying to keep on top of everything because they need to prep all the roads for the paving. They got to do the aerial brushing. They got to do the ditching, the culverts. They got to pick up garbage every week because people don't dispose of it properly. There's a lot of pressure on them. When I was talking to them this afternoon about, okay, well, if you want to put this much money into ditching and culverts, and this is going to be your wages, where am I going to take that out from? Because I've already allocated everything that you're going to, all of the hours that you have, I've allocated. So where do you want to take from in order to make this work? And so, unless we again go to just purely contracting everything out for shoulders, rather than relying on the internal staff, costs are even higher. It's a delicate balance to find out which ones are really needed. The ditches and culverts were identified as being significant problems because of the heavy rains in December. Shoulders, I think until we get more complaints in about this one has to be done, then they're just going to be putting it off until they can find the time to do it.
Mr. Creek, when you say they're responsive to complaints, but do they assess the roads themselves as well?
Through your chair. Yeah, when they're driving around and going to do whatever jobs, like they'll identify the problems, and that's part of the work they do when they're planning out the capital road program. They'll be like, oh yeah, this one definitely needs to be done. This one's in the estimate, so we can put that one off, that type of thing. So they do see it on a daily basis because they're out there every day, all week. So it is one thing they keep their eye on.
Okay, thank you. I do know what Councillor Gray is speaking of on Taylor Road there because it's basically a one lane. When you have to move over, you do fall off that road, and there's a hedgerow there. But I'm not sure why when it was paved, why there wasn't more gravel feathered out there. But anyways, that is definitely one of the ones too that I've noticed. Okay, so Mayor Little's got to leave. Councillor Gray has left, or Shukin, I should say, and so therefore we'll be at no quorum. So I would suggest that we probably need to wrap up and reconvene at a different date to finish this because there's some important information here. Does that sound about right?
Unless there were some things in here like number 7 or the fire vehicle that we can take a vote on for like number 5.
Right. Yeah, number 5 is definitely one that's been brought up in the correspondence. Shall we address that right now and then is there anything else?
Is there anything that you need me to answer to besides number 5?
That's what I'm looking at here.
Through the chair. No, that would be the main.
Is it time sensitive?
Yeah, main issue. Like the sooner he could lock that in if it's approved by council, the better. Because he's identified 3 that are available right now for between 35 to 50,000, and then just getting it kitted out with the lights and the systems. There's about another 10. So if he's authorized to do that, he can take care of that now, and then have the extra vehicle around. That's the only one that really needs to go around because the civilian staffing is same no matter what.
Right. Okay. Okay, comments on number 5?
Perhaps I'll move the motion and get it on the floor.
Sorry.
Shall I move a motion to allocate up to 70K for a used truck, which will include the additional kitting required to make it an emergency vehicle for the fire chief? So moved.
Okay, so moved by Mayor Little, seconded by,
I'll second it for discussion.
okay. Go ahead. Would you like to motivate Mayor Little?
Yeah, we were told that the new fire chief requires a vehicle. There isn't an extra vehicle for him to use. We can't expect him to use his little tiny car going up these driveways when he's responding from his residence. He's not right in the district here, so I think it's a necessity. Thank you. And this isn't a new vehicle, it's
Right.
a used vehicle.
Councillor Gray?
Yeah, I mean, I wish the best for the new fire chief. What I'm uncertain about here, we've got a fairly significant tax increase coming. I wasn't clear what the arrangement is that's been made. The purpose of the truck is to get to work, it sounds like, to drive from home to the fire department.
Okay, that was one of the questions I have too. I do know it's customary for a fire chief at most fire departments to have a vehicle. I just didn't know if from people who I've spoken to in the field, they are living in proximity. So I couldn't tell from here if it was from his current residence to our fire department or if it's during shift work. Because I know that we have Battalion 1 gets used 24 hours a day. The CEO, do you have background on that for us?
Yeah, there's no commitment to provide a vehicle for him to go home with at all. It would be for his use during the day and other staff use during the day to make sure that we have the right tools to get to fires. The odd occasion where the fire chief will have to be on duty and he wants to go home, potentially he would take the truck home that night because he's on duty that night. But other than that, he would drive to work like anybody else and then switch over vehicles when he gets to work. That's it.
Okay. Councillor Gray?
Through the chair, thank you to the CEO. So I'm not entirely sure then what the point of providing a truck is if he's coming to work and back. The justification here was that he's unable to live in Metchosin. That's taken care of if he's using his private vehicle. So what's the need for the new vehicle? I don't understand that now. That's to say our previous fire chief would arrive at work and their vehicle would be there.
Through the chair. So he had identified that we have 4 staff members all doing different things, but we only have 1 vehicle to be used amongst all of them. And so we're like, it's not operationally prudent to only have 1 vehicle when that gets taken out, nobody else can go do their job around the district. And so that's why I'm saying we should have at least, we need to, 1 is required in order to have better operation set up at our fire department. It's kind of what I've been told.
So this question because I don't know the whole fleet, Battalion 1, which we just replaced a couple of years ago, that's the one I see around a lot, and I see all of our staff using that, our day staff. And then after hours, our duty officers use that because it goes through my neighborhood because one of them lives in our neighborhood too. So that one gets shared 24 hours. And then we have, there's another vehicle I know that does go to first responders. So I'm assuming there's that as the first responder truck. Then we have the flat deck truck, which is the old battalion, which I think just uses as a work vehicle. I don't know that it goes anywhere. It has gone to deployment, but I don't know that it goes anywhere And then we have, at nighttime at least, we have our van, which is got some lovely night names. No, I'm saying like at nighttime. But we also have the fire. We also have the building inspector's truck that sits there at nighttime too. If they were to need that, I don't know. It doesn't have the lights and stuff. I understand that. I'm just trying to, if we're looking at different vehicles for different things, and I don't understand all of it, so I'm just saying we have a fleet, and I don't know what they all do. So we're asking for 2 vehicles at $70,000 each, I presume, and used. That's I'm assuming that includes the kitting, because used vehicles are a lot cheaper than $70,000. So, and I know that we've gotten some emails, and I'm not sure if I've got the letters here, but certainly we did get some emails, and I know I got some phone calls on this as well. So just trying to understand all that is required. I do know that fire chiefs do get a vehicle when they're on during their work hours, or if they're living in the vicinity to and from their job, especially in the bigger departments. Any further comments, Councillor Gray?
Yeah, I'm just not entirely clear what the difference is. We just heard this isn't for going home and coming back. This is for a vehicle on site. And I don't understand what the difference is from, say, last week to this week. Last week, we had what we had in terms of the array of vehicles, and this week, we're short 2 vehicles. So I would like a better explanation, perhaps a briefing note that lays out what's changed. I realize we have a new chief, but what's the rationale behind this? As written here, it sounded like it was to travel from home to work. We found out today that's not what it is. So what is it? And I'm open to the discussion. I just don't understand why we would make this expenditure at this time without a further explanation.
Request that we call the question.
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of moving $70,000 for a used truck to be kitted out? In favor is 1, Mayor Little, and opposed, Councillor Gray and Councillor Donaldson. So the motion at this time fails. Okay. So now that Mayor Little has to leave and we have no quorum, we need to stop our meeting and reschedule to finish at another date.
Move adjournment.
Moved by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.